want to find that drive and focus that has you locked in and on fire every single day, my book, The Mirror of Motivation, will do it for you. I bought a copy for you. You take care of the shipping. The book is free. Click the link down there. I got you.
Stay all day.
Now tuned in to the best of the best show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, the go-getter energy that moves you to make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. Putting all this together, what you get is the mindset, the method, the philosophy, the show, the book, known as Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. Today's topic, how your biggest challenges actually work in your favor. Now, when I say your biggest challenges, I am not talking about the challenges that are fun, or the challenges that you set up for yourself for the most part, or the challenges that you're happy to engage in. Like, let's say if you're outside running and you want to run an extra mile on a treadmill or something like that. I'm not talking about that kind of challenge. Or the challenge of, let me see if I can lift a little bit more weight than I usually lift, or let me challenge myself to make more money this month than I made last month. I'm not talking about those kind of challenges. The ones that you set up for yourself, the ones that you're happy to be involved in, the ones that you already have at least a little bit of a track record of succeeding at. Those are not the challenges that we're discussing here today. I'm talking about the challenges that get thrust upon you unexpectedly, the kind of challenges that are thrust upon you unexpectedly and you absolutely have to deal with them, and you were not even expecting to have to deal with them at all. You weren't even thinking about these challenges, but now they're right there in your lap and you had to do something about them right now. Those are the kind of challenges I'm talking about. And this often happens at a very inopportune time. Most of the challenges that we weren't looking forward to, most of the challenges we weren't expecting, usually they happen at inopportune times and we weren't waiting for them. We weren't planning for them, right? Such as, let's give some examples, such as if you get a bad health diagnosis from your doctor who says, listen, if you don't start exercising 5 times a week right now, or you're going to die in 6 months. All right, that's an inopportune time to be told that, because you probably haven't been exercising at all. And now you got to start exercising. And if you don't, you're going to die. Or that's an inopportune thing. And that's something that was thrust upon you that you got to deal with. Maybe your family's in some type of struggle and everybody's looking at you to be the person who can solve that problem. And you didn't even know if you weren't thinking when you woke up today that you were the one who was going to have to deal with that situation, but now you absolutely are the person that got to deal with it. Maybe any problem that can be solved seemingly only one way, and you're responsible for solving it, and you're not sure you can pull off solving the problem in that one way, but it seems like that's the only way it can be done, but you got to deal with that. That's what today's topic is about, how to deal with these big challenges and how to actually make them work in your favor, or how they will work in your favor, because they're going to put you in certain positions that you otherwise may never have gotten into. So let's get into our points so you understand what I mean. Again, the topic, how your biggest challenges work in your favor. Point number 1, these challenges force you to do what you already knew you needed to do, but you were procrastinating and actually doing. This is a huge one right here. I mean, this topic right here could be the whole episode. I mean, this point right here could be the whole episode. The biggest challenges you face will force you into action that you never thought of before. No, so that's not what I mean. It's not some action that, damn, I never thought of doing this, but now I'm doing it. This is the kind of action that it forces you in a kind of action that you always known about. You've talked about it. Maybe you wrote it down. Maybe you thought about it. Maybe you did a whole bunch of research on it, yet you didn't do anything. Even though you had all the information, you knew you wanted to do that thing. Now you're in a situation where you need to do that thing. That is the type of thing. That's one of the benefits that you get from the biggest challenges that you'll face in life. You are procrastinating on doing it. Like, yeah, I know I need to do that, but I'll get around to it, or I don't need to. I mean, things are going pretty well right now. Why do I even need to force myself into doing that thing? I'm in a pretty good space right now. I don't need to make it any more serious than it already is. 50 Cent, who I did a Virtual Mentors episode on. I mean, he was already coming out with a rap album. He had actually gotten a record label to sign him. He was trying to get out of the streets, got a record label to sign him. So he was taking his rap career seriously enough that he got a record deal. He had an album about to come out, so things were looking pretty good for him. Then he got shot, and then nobody wanted to deal with him in the record industry. He finally built himself back up, and once he became successful, wildly successful in the music industry, and he talked about it, he said, listen, after I got shot, I became more focused. I got more locked into what I needed to do. It sharpened my focus. I was already getting out of the streets and trying to get into music. Then I got more focused on getting out of the streets and getting into the music because I realized this could all end very quickly. This could happen to me again tomorrow if I don't get focused and get sharpened mentally on what I need to do. That's the kind of, he already knew he needed to do that, but he was kind of procrastinating on taking it super duper serious. But those gunshots caused him to do exactly that. I heard a guy named Grant Cardone, who's an author of in his own right. I actually have a show over on his network. He's based in Miami as well. He talked about when the financial crisis of 2008-ish happened, he realized that he had put himself in a very unsafe position when it came to his business and when it came to his finances. And he decided that he finally needed to start putting more money into advertising and getting his name out there. It's something that he had already thought about doing before, but he had always procrastinated on doing because things were going good enough for him up until that point. But when things started looking really bad for him, he said, all right, I got to finally go all in on this because I don't have any other choice. Jay-Z, he was trying to get on in the rap industry. We talked about him yesterday. Nobody wanted to sign him. And Jay-Z said, no, why not just own my own business? I owned my business when I was in the streets. When I was in the streets dealing drugs, why not just keep owning my business and just do it legitimately now? It forced him into that, these circumstances that he didn't want. He didn't want to be an unsigned rapper. He wanted somebody to sign him, but nobody wanted him. So he became the business owner that he remains to this very day. I've heard multiple entrepreneurs, maybe some people who are listening to this right now, tell the story of how they got into some legal situation, maybe when it came to their specific industry or just a legal situation period that blocked them, like literally blocked them from working in certain industries. Like I was listening to a guy, I forget what industry he worked in, but he worked in some type of maybe something with real estate or insurance, mortgages, something like that, where he had gotten into some type of legal situation. And because of the resolution of that legal situation, he was blocked from working in that industry. He could not be hired by any company in that industry because of the legal situation he had been in his past. It was on his record. So he had no choice but to become an entrepreneur and work and still do the same thing he was doing, but he wasn't able to be hired by a company. So he had to do it as an entrepreneur. He became wildly successful as an entrepreneur in that space. He had no choice. He couldn't get a job. He wasn't allowed to get a job. So he didn't just slowly mosey into entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship was forced upon him because he couldn't get hired working anywhere because of what he had been through. I heard DJ Khaled. Everybody knows who Khaled is, right? He talked about when his first son was on the way, he had looked at his life and his career and said, I made these hit records and I've done these things, but I don't really have the things that I want to have in my life. So I need to get more serious about my business, about my career and my life. And that's what he started doing. That was the exact same time that DJ Khaled started to become super duper famous he did it through social media, started doing it through Snapchat, becoming so famous because at the same time, as I heard him say just a couple weeks ago, I heard him say this, that he started taking everything in his life and his career much more seriously because he just had a heart-to-heart with himself. He had a come-to-Jesus moment with himself about the fact that his life wasn't where he wanted it to be. And with the kid coming, that kind of forced him to get more serious about his life. And I don't have children, but I've heard many people say that exact same thing, that once they knew they had a child on the way or the child was there already, that they looked at themselves and looked at their lives and said, man, I better start getting serious. I better start doing the things that I've been thinking about but not getting around to, all the stuff I've been procrastinating on. Let me get serious about right now, because now I'm not responsible just for me. Like if I fail, it's fine, but now if I and this person fails, this young life that I'm responsible for, or if they get married, somebody's married, if me and my wife fail, or me and my husband fail, if me and my kids fail, my family fails, my parents fail, then I'm hurting other people. If I just hurt me is one thing. Many of us will do a whole lot more to help or save others than we will to help or save ourselves. And some of us will do a whole lot to save ourselves when we're put in a position we have no choice but to save ourselves. The challenge that many of us have in our day-to-day lives, being that we are so relatively safe and our lives are so relatively convenient, is that we are never forced. There's never a fire lit under our asses to make us stop procrastinating on things we know we want to do, the things that we know we will eventually need to do. We just never get around to them because nothing is forcing us into it. Human beings are masters of procrastination. They say the largest nation in the world, the most populated nation in the world is China, right? With what is it? 1 billion people living in China? Well, that's a lie. China is not the most populated country in the world. You know the largest country in the world? The largest nation is procrastination, right? Because all of us procrastinate. We all wait. We all hesitate. We all drag our feet. We all say we'll get around to it whenever we get around to it. But sometimes in life, circumstance forces you to get around to it. And that's actually the biggest thing that catapults a whole lot of people to success. So how are you going to force yourself into success? Are you going to wait till some type of catastrophe or some unforeseen circumstance forces you to get serious? Or are you going to end that procrastination by your own force of will, by your own personal initiative that we talk about here every day? These are some questions for you to marinate on as we move on to, as I'll tell you one more thing about point number 1. We are procrastinators and we act mostly out of self-interest and out of necessities. 2 reasons human beings act. Let me tell you those 2 reasons again. Look at your own life and you tell me if I'm wrong about this. We as humans, we take action for 2 reasons only, either out of self-interest or out of necessity. And usually that necessity is our self-interest. Sometimes they're the exact same thing. If there's no self-interest in an action and there's no necessity in an action, usually we do absolutely nothing. Now tell me I'm wrong. Point number 2. Today's topic is how your biggest challenges in life work in your favor. When you face a huge challenge in life, what you find out is how good you actually are. Because when you're facing a challenge that you didn't see coming, one that you did not have time to prepare for, one that you may realize even once you start taking action that you're not quite so prepared for it, but you still got to deal with it one way or another, you'll find out how much skill you actually have. Because as I've told you before, as my sports coaches always told me, you are only as good as what you come up against in order to achieve your achievements. So if you won a basketball championship, but you were playing against players who are just 10 levels below you, but you beat up on all of them, you didn't really prove anything. Yes, you won the trophy, but who'd you beat? So it's not just did you win, it's who or what did you come up against to achieve what you have achieved. When you face a real worthy challenger in life, you will find out for sure how good and capable you actually are. And if you never face a real worthy challenger, you'll never know for sure how good you actually are because you've never really been challenged. Any of you who follows boxing, professional boxing, or I guess we could say MMA fighting as well. I guess they talk about this, but there's always these conversations in boxing that such and such boxer, maybe they have a good record, but they've never fought anybody. That's something that I've always heard critics say. I'm not a big follower of boxing, but I hear critics say this all the time about certain boxers who've won a lot of fights and don't have many losses, maybe no losses. Yeah, they're undefeated, but they haven't fought anybody who could possibly beat them. They haven't gone up against this guy. They haven't fought that guy or that guy. Some people like to say that as a criticism. Now, I don't know if it's true or not about any particular boxer because I don't know the sport well enough to comment on it. But the fact that people say things like that is just supporting the point that I'm making. You really find out how good you are when you go up against the best that there are to offer. Who are the best that you could possibly go up against? What's the biggest challenge that you could possibly face? Whatever that biggest challenge is that you could possibly face is probably not something that you would set up on your own. I mean, you're not going to set up a financial crisis to find out how good of a business person you can be, right? You're not going to get somebody to shoot you 9 times to find out if you can become a successful rapper. I hope you're not just going to get somebody pregnant on purpose just so you can become serious about your life and your business. But when you go up against those big challenges, whatever they happen to be, you will find out how good you actually are because you're either going to fall or you're going to survive. You're either going to stay standing or you're going to fall down, one or the other. Any basketball players here who are listening to this, maybe you had a father or an older brother or a coach who would always force you to play with players who are older than you so you can get your ass kicked, so they can toughen you up. Right? So you can learn how to play against people who are bigger and stronger and better than you and more experienced than you. And you had to stay out there and figure out how tough you actually were and actually get better playing against people who will force you to step your game up. Maybe it's the same thing. I don't know from firsthand experience. Maybe it's the same thing in boxing or wrestling or martial arts, where one of your coaches or trainers makes you go up spar against somebody who's bigger, stronger, better than you. And you may even be afraid of that person, but you got to figure out a way to beat them or at least a way to compete against them. Otherwise, you're going to fall and you might not come back from that. Point number 3. Today's topic is how your biggest challenges in life are actually your biggest opportunities for growth. How they work actually in your favor. How these biggest challenges work for you the third way is that they help you gain clarity and see what's really important in your life. And as you can see from these examples that I've given you here already, when Grant Cardone said he figured out, listen, I got to really get serious about this because this is my business. He's a business owner. He's an entrepreneur. So everything that was going on in his life was fueled by his business. So when it looked like his business was about to fail and he was about to go under, he was about to go bankrupt, and he owed all this money to whatever entities and organizations, he's like, all right, I need to get clarity on what's really important in my life. What's really important in my life is I got to take care of my family, take care of my wife, take care of my kids, and I got to make sure this business is working because that's how I do it. So that's when he said, all right, what's the next dot? Connecting the dots. The next thing is I got to get people to know my name so they can see this good stuff that I have, and then I can start selling it and I can make more money, and the rest became history. Jay-Z, the most important thing in his life is he wanted to get out the streets and become a legitimate business owner, a legitimate business person. And when nobody would sign him to be a rapper, he decided, all right, I still got to be a rapper. So the way that I'll do it is I'll just start my own business. Entrepreneurs saying the same thing. They got blocked from getting a job. If you can't get a job, then how are you going to eat? So all right, I have to start a business. Maybe they weren't even thinking about doing it. DJ Khaled, what's the most important thing? What he talked about in this interview that I referred to was that he was just thinking about his wife, and if he had children, what could he leave to them? And he didn't think he had much to leave to them, even though he had been relatively successful in the music industry up to that point. And that's when he started to get a little bit more serious about what he was doing. And it's the same thing that happens with all of us when we go up against big challenges in life. We get clarity. We get focused on what's really important to us. I mentioned 50 Cent earlier. When he got shot, he told the story of after he got shot that it helped him get focused. Because listen, I could die anytime. I might get shot again, or I could just die that quick. He realized how quickly life could end. I mean, how long does it take somebody to shoot you? It doesn't take that much time. That quickly, everything could be over. That's when he really started to think about what his purpose is, when he really got focused and he really started doing what he needed to do with and about and within his life. Steve Jobs, another guy. So we use a lot of music examples here. Steve Jobs is a guy who, I mean, we all know who he is. We're using the product that he envisioned and he created, whether it's an iPhone, a Mac computer, a tablet, some AirPods. 90% of you are using some type of Apple product. And Steve Jobs had a book written. It was his life story, but he didn't write it. It was written by a guy named Walter Isaacson. I suggest you read that book. I mentioned and referred to that book probably 200 episodes ago. So if you haven't listened to it yet, you weren't paying attention. So go get the book. It's called Steve Jobs. Has his face on the cover. And I'm going to give you a quote from that book that Steve Jobs said. Quote, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool that I have ever encountered to help me make big choices in life. Almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. No one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet, death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it, and that's how it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life. It's life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new." And on that note, let's recap today's topic, which is how your biggest challenges work in your favor. Again, I'm not talking about the challenges that you set up on your own or the ones that you're happy to deal with or the ones that you know are coming. I'm talking about the ones that get thrust in your lap, interrupt your life, and you have to deal with them right now, often an urgent situation that you got to deal with. I'm talking about how those, such as a diagnosis from a doctor, your family's in a struggle and they're expecting you to solve it. Any problem that can only be solved one way, you're not sure you can pull it off. That's what we're talking about here today. Number one, these big challenges force you to do what you already knew you needed to do, but you were procrastinating on actually doing. Grant Cardone talked about spending more money on advertising once his business looked like it was about to fail. Jay-Z becoming a business owner when nobody wanted to sign him. I've heard a few entrepreneurs talk about how they got in a legal situation that blocked them from getting a job, so they had no choice but to start a business. DJ Khaled got more serious about his business when his kid was on the way. We are all, as human beings, we are natural procrastinators, and we act most of the time only out of self-interest and out of necessity, and often we won't act under any other circumstance. Point number two, you'll find out how good you really are. You're only as good as what you come up against. So without a real worthy challenge, often one that you didn't set up on your own, because the ones we set up on our own are the ones we know we can deal with, you'll never know for sure how good and how capable you actually are. Any basketball players here, maybe you had a father or older brother or a coach who made you play against people who are older and better than you to kick your ass so they could toughen you up, right? Maybe the same in boxing or wrestling, any type of martial arts or any type of fighting. You went up against people who are bigger, stronger, better than you so you could get beat up and find out how tough you were so you can come back the next day, or if you will come back the next day. Point number 3, these challenges help you gain clarity and see what's really important in your life. The biggest challenges you face cause you to clear out all the BS from your life and actually get focused. That's what big challenges do. And Steve Jobs, by the way, I didn't even mention it. Steve Jobs had a terminal sickness. He was told that he was going to die. He knew that he was going to die. And that's when he made this quote. And I'll close it by repeating the quote. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool that I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. No one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet, death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it, and that's how it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life. It is life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Work on your game. Dre all day.